We are sure you have heard the stories and seen the postcards of Sapa. Of course you have, after all, we visited Sapa together, just 2 episodes ago. But what about Bắc Hà? I bet that this name also sounds Spanish to you, as it did to us at first too. Bắc Hà is a name that rarely makes it past the lips of even the most well-versed travel agents, and their glossy over-inspiring brochures, flashy travel catalogs that so often present places in a more polished light than they truly are. But that is precisely the hidden magic of Bắc Hà. It is because its beauty lies not in embellishment, but in its understated realness, and this is what makes this town so very special and unique. Bắc Hà is nestled at over 1,000 meters above sea level, and cradled gently into the mist-veiled eastern slopes of the Lào Cai Highlands. It is a town that does not shout, but a place that sings softly in the language of plum blossoms, a blooming scent so lovely as it drifts through the air, it makes us linger longer than we ever planned. And when this fragrant spell is paired with ancient stones, pathways that remember the footsteps of generations, Bắc Hà truly becomes the destination that offers far more than it reveals at its very first glance. Because it is here, where the flower hamong wear their stories in thread, a wire yarn that with each stitch and color is reflecting its memory and its declaration of cultural independence. It is also the valley where the air still carries the lovely aroma of corn wine and wood smoke, and where the hills still echo with market laughter that begins before sunrise, a state that is transforming Bắc Hà from a destination into a revelation of joy and true happiness. It is also the site where palaces crumble with dignity and where waterfalls write their own poetries while rushing down the cliffs. We arrived here after a long and rough ride in expected quietness, but instead we found a riot of culture, resilience, and great amount of grace. The roads up here twisted like a serpent. And trust me, so are the tales of this rather remote and hidden location, where every alley, every valley, and every embroidered sleeve still cradles an unspoken secret, a fable that is whispered not only in words, but also in color, texture, and silence. This is not the Vietnam that is curated for the tourist lens, no, this is the real Vietnam, the Vietnam as it breathes, aches, and as it celebrates. And so, the town of Bắc Hà does not ask to be known, it waits to be felt. And if its name was once unfamiliar to you, that is no fault of yours. But by the time this episode fades to silence, Bắc Hà will have etched itself into your memory, as it did into ours, and not as a destination, but as a feeling. A place that lingers in the folds of our imagination, like the scent of plum blossoms after a heavy rain. We will not just know the town of Bắc Hà, no, but we will carry the feeling and the taste of Bắc Hà within ourselves. So do not hesitate, just lean back, breathe deep, and let us take you on a journey through the hidden wonder of Bắc Hà, which is a town so special and unlike any other place that you have ever seen before. And here we go, just when I thought that Bắc Hà was all about plum blossoms and embroidered hamong sleeves. I turn around the corner and boom, an electronics store by Media Market is standing proud like it is about to sell flat-screen TVs to poor-sighted water buffaloes. It feels like stepping into a parallel universe, where tradition and tech are shaking hands in the mist, and for a moment, I wasn't sure anymore, if I was in the Highlands, or in a sci-fi reboot of rural Vietnam.
The second row here.
We are now arriving at the town plaza of Bắc Hà, where every Sunday morning the market stalls are humming and where the plum blossoms is drifting like silent whispers. This is also the place of the Bắc Hà Temple, a religious site that does not just mark history, but a site that embodies it. The Den Bắc Hà was built in the late 19th century, and it is much more than a spiritual site. It is a monument devoted to the two brothers, namely Vu Van Nguyen and Vu Van Mat. These are the two leaders whose legacy shaped the destiny of Vietnam's northwestern frontier. These two men were not just warriors, but they were visionaries, from the rugged highlands of Ngoc Yuyen. They established a military base and brought peace and prosperity to a vast borderland. As their leadership under the Mac and the Li dynasties earned them the title of Quoc Tsong, securing them with the privilege that their names were etched into the imperial records as defenders of the realm. The temple itself is a marvel too, as its back is resting against the protective mountain, while its facade faces the cultural center and the market plaza itself, as if it is watching over the town's daily rhythm. The religious temple was reconstructed after it collapsed in 2003, and it now stands renewed, yet reverent, and preserving its original spirit. And every year on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month, the temple is erupting in celebration, when the locals gather to honor the death anniversary of Jia Quoc Tsong Vu Van Mat, with rituals, folk games, Chinese chess, cockfighting, and traditional dances that echo through the valley like ancestral songs. Now, as for the main market, which happens once a week, namely every Sunday morning at the Bắc Hà Town Plaza. I learned from the locals that it is the biggest and most vibrant ethnic minority market here in this region, which is drawing the flower Hmongs, the Tay, the Nung, and other communities from all across the Lào Cai and the Ha Giang Highlands for trade, here to this unique and vibrant place. The market is divided into zones, with brocade stalls, food courts, and even a horse trading section. Sounds of bargaining, laughter, and traditional music fill the air, while the scent of tang ko stew, fresh herbs, and corn wine drifts through the entire plaza. Moreover, here is also the Buffalo Market, which is held on every Saturdays, and where locals trade their livestock in a scene that feels like it has been unchanged for many generations. And if you are planning to capture the full spirit of Bắc Hà, then Sunday is your golden window. But arriving on Saturday gives you a deeper look into its rural heartbeat, which you are able to experience only here, as this is not just commerce, but it is a weekly cultural exchange that is deeply rooted in ancient traditions. We are now arriving at the Hoàng A Tưởng Palace, which is said to be a creation that was born of two worlds, and built by a Tay lord who was known as the Cat King, and who dreamed of a palace that would outlast all the empires and echoing his name through the stones. So, let us go back into the early 20th century, when the mountains of Bắc Hà still whispered secrets to the wind and the valleys pulsed with tribal rhythms, and where one man dared to carve his permanence into the shifting mists of this very wild and untamed region. He was a Tay ethnic lord who was known by the name of Hòang Yến, and as the Cat King Chao among the Ha Hmong community. It is said that he did not just rule with his wealth, but also with his myth. And that was in a time when colonial powers loomed and feudal systems frayed, when Hòang Yến Chao envisioned this fortress that would defy both time and politics, and become a palace that would immortalize his lineage and command awe from every ridge and ravine. Construction began in 1914 and lasted for 7 years. It was supervised by 2 architects. One was a French guy, and the other one a Chinese. And together they fused the east and west designs into a singular vision of balconies, laurel motifs, and classical columns, which was the symbols of prosperity and European elegance, and combining it with feng shui harmony, ornamental flourishes, and a layout designed not just for beauty, but also for spiritual defense. The result was a 4,000 square meter large palace, with 36 rooms, which was flanked by auxiliary buildings and fortified walls pierced with gun holes, and making it a mansion, a fortress, and a statement of power. However, when Hòang Yến Chao passed, his son Hoàng A Tưởng inherited the palace and its legend, but unfortunately by 1950, the family fled Bắc Hà and leaving behind only stone and silence. All the furniture vanished, all the laughter faded, only the architecture endured, kind of like a ghost that is refusing to be forgotten. Then in 1999, the Vietnamese government declared the palace a national relic. And preserving it as a cultural landmark, with travelers wandering its echoing halls, and imagining the feasts, the secrets, and the power plays that once unfolded within this unique palace. Of course, we cannot miss out on the Hong Lam Supermart, as this is the unofficial lifeline of Bắc Hà town, and stocked with almost everything from instant noodles to motorbike oil. It is the place where locals and travelers alike find what we did not know that we needed. Though its aisles feel more like a treasure hunt than a tidy display, the sheer variety in such a tied place makes it the town's go-to supermarket and department store for daily essentials and last-minute surprises. Let us also have a look at the CHүзA Linh Sun Buddhist temple, which is perched quietly on this hill and overlooking the town of Bắc Hà. From up there it is offering sweeping views of the valley below and a tranquil refuge for peaceful reflection. Its modest architecture and peaceful grounds invite visitors to pause, breathe, and feel the gentle rhythm of Buddhist devotion, a spirituality that is tightly woven into this distinctive and special landscape here in the Tay Con Linh system, which is part of the eastern slopes of the Hong Linh Sun mountain range. We are now entering the daily market street, which is a place that never sleeps. Here, long after the Sunday crowds have dispersed and the famed ethnic fair has faded into memory, the Bắc Hà market street continues to hum quietly and steadily. It is like a loom that is weaving the daily rhythm of this town. This market is locally also known as the Chợ Văn Hóa Bắc Hà, and is a traditional market which is not only a place just to shop, but it is a living archive of culture, resilience, and an everyday magic that seems to be filled with never-ending surprises. Here, each morning, vendors unfurl their tarps and stack their wares in a choreography that's part instinct, part improvisation. The layout may seem chaotic, with plastic buckets placed beside herbal tonics, textiles tangled with motorbike parts, but hey, this is precisely the erratic charm that makes this market feel alive. It is definitely not curated for us visitors. No, it is curated by need, habit, and the pulse of the people who live here. This is exactly the place where flower Hmong women in embroidered skirts haggle over spices, while Tay farmers trade fresh produce and hand-forged tools. Here we will find everything from buffalo saddles to instant noodles, and if you linger long enough, someone might offer you a shot of homemade corn wine or a story about the hills. Unlike the famous Sunday market, which bursts with spectacle and ceremony, the daily market here is intimate and unfiltered. It is a place where we can find and see life that unfolds in real time. It is where the locals come and gather not just to buy and sell, but to gossip, to laugh, and to keep the threads of this community tightly woven and alive.
Looks like the market is just finished.
And as we are now riding back to our traditional Hmong homestay, let us dive a bit deeper into the past history of this town. Long before plum trees painted the valleys white, Bắc Hà was a kingdom in miniature. It was ruled not by emperors, but by a Tay lord, and he was known as the Cat King, as we mentioned before. His name was Hòang Yến Chao, and his power stretched across the highlands like the mist over terraced fields. from his yellow palace which we just visited, and which he built on land chosen by geomancers for its perfect feng shui. He governed a semi-feudal realm where ethnic minorities traded tribute for their protection, and where colonial whispers still echoed through the stone corridors of this town. His mansion was a palace born of two worlds, designed by a French architect and a Chinese master, and blending classical columns with Eastern ornamentation. Yet beneath the grandeur, these hills told a different story. A narrative that started long time ago, when Bắc Hà was still a part of Vietnam's infamous opium belt, and when its slopes were blooming with poppies that fed colonial trade and the local survival. And undoubtedly, the Cat King's rule also thrived in this shadow economy, where wealth came not just from the land, but also from the narcotic gold of these mountains. I learned that historical accounts suggest that Hòang Yến Chao, the Tay lord known as the Cat King, and his family were deeply entangled in the opium trade during their rule over Bắc Hà in the early 20th century. As before 1945, this place functioned as a semi-feudal colonial society, and the Cat King's family reportedly collaborated with the French colonial authorities to exploit the local resources, as well as the opium cultivation and its trade. Their wealth and power were not just built on land and livestock, but also on controlling trade routes and taxing ethnic minorities, particularly the Hmong, who were often involved in poppy farming. The opium economy was a shadow layer beneath the grandeur of the Hoàng A Tưởng Palace, which itself became a symbol of both, namely privilege and extreme oppression. Now don't be surprised, as this part of the history is rarely highlighted in the oh-so-clean tourist brochures. But it adds a powerful layer of complexity to the narrative, and where plum blossoms now bloom over fields that once fed an empire of narcotics. Then by the 1990s came the quiet revolution, and the poppies were gone, and replaced by plum trees, whose blossoms turned the valleys into a springtime dreamscape. The transformation was not just agricultural, no, it was also symbolic, as Bắc Hà shed its opium past and stepped into a new identity, one of cultural pride, ethnic resilience, and pure natural beauty. Today, the town hums with daily life markets that never sleep, horse races that echoes the tribal pride, and temples perched on hills that watch over the valley like silent guardians. Now, from above, Bắc Hà unfolds like a woven tapestry of terraced agricultural fields that ripple across the hillsides in shades of jade and gold. It is stitched together by winding dirt paths and the silver thread of the Nam Thin stream. The town itself nestles quietly in the valley, its rooftops clustered like scattered seeds. In the morning the mist is drifting lazily over the eastern ridges and blurring the lines between heaven and earth. It is a landscape that breathes history and rhythm, where every curve and contour tells a story of resilience, ritual, and the quiet poetry of highland life. But time is not standing still, as roads are being reborn, like the recent upgrade to the route leading into the commune of Tai Giang Phu, which is a part of a broader push to improve access and connectivity across the district. These new arteries do not just carry vehicles, but they also carry opportunity, linking remote villages to markets, schools, and the ever-growing tourism circuit. We can also clearly see that new buildings are rising, modern guest houses, cafes, and cultural centers now at the town's edges, and trying to blend concrete with charm. While the layout still feels organic, sometimes even chaotic, there is a quiet ambition in the air, as Bắc Hà is no longer just a weekend escape, but it is becoming a hub for highland heritage, hospitality, and commerce. And from above, it is clear, this is a town that is remembering its past, but it is also a place that is not afraid to reshape its future too. Let me now introduce you to this semi-Hmong homestay, which is a truly hidden gem here in the vicinity of the town of Bắc Hà. It is run by a warm-hearted local lady who offers a truly authentic highland experience. Nestled in a stunning Thai-style wooden guesthouse, this homestay overlooks a breathtaking valley of rice terraces that shift with the seasons. From the cozy room to the host's exceptional hospitality, every moment felt like a gentle immersion into the local lifestyle. And if you are also one of these wandering souls, nomadic warriors which are seeking the true spirit of Bắc Hà, and the real unfiltered charm, the genuine warm hospitality, and the authentic quiet beauty which is tucked away, but still not too far from the hustle and bustle of the pulsating town life, then I wholeheartedly recommend this stay, because of a moment that reminded me of the meaning what traveling through this amazing part of Vietnam is truly all about it. And if you are still with me, thank you for joining us on this breathtaking journey through the unique town of Bắc Hà, where history and culture intertwine in every street and story. But wait, do not go anywhere just yet, as the adventure is only beginning now. In our next episode, we leave the highland charm of Bắc Hà behind us, and head out along the rural road extension of the T153, and winding toward the commune of Nong Ma in the Jin Man district. Here, we shall cross from the Lào Cai province into the wild heart of the Hòang province, where the T153 transitions into the T178, and where the road climbs over the legendary Dao Gio Pass, which is a windswept gateway that leads down into the remote and rugged town of CHqədA. From there, we follow the T178 deeper into the Che River Valley, tracing its curves and contours all the way to the town of Vinh Quang, which is the cultural capital of the Hong Su Phi district, and surrounded by some of Vietnam's most spectacular rice terraces. So, grab your chips and tighten up your seatbelt, as the next episode is not just a ride, no, it is a foray into the unknown. A passage through mist and memory, a journey into the soul of the eastern parts of the northern Vietnam, and I warmly invite you to travel it with us as we enter the famous remote gateway to eastern Vietnam and the untamed Hòang area. The road ahead will lead us into the steep, stunning, and absolutely unforgettable region of Hòang and into the heart of the Tay Con Linh mountain range, which is the rugged backbone of the southwestern highlands of Hòang, a remote region which is cloaked in ancient forests and dotted with hundreds of ethnic villages.